All right, it's a big day in the Pass Interference podcast for two reasons. Number one, the people's guest is back, Doug Hyde, my guy at the Herald. Recap some OTAs, talk some Stefon Diggs and David Andrews. Number two is we might have a giant king-sized interruption because I'm having a mattress delivered to my apartment is possibly within 40 minutes. So we are not going to race through the podcast. We will just welcome the movers, see what they think about Cardi B and Stefon Diggs hard launching, as the kids say. But why wait for them? Doug, what do we make of Stefon Diggs and Cardi B off the top?
I literally didn't even know that this had happened. So that's where I'm so football focused right now. I thought they were already official. Are they now official? What's going on? You gotta let me know.
So this starts last night before doing BST, where forget hard launch. Felger did not know that going to Instagram official was how you announce relationships.
Yeah.
Which is not altogether that surprising. What was surprising is the fact that this whatever-year-old man, who is certainly older than he is, at least in terms of culture and topical references, referenced that then 3 times in the opening 7 minutes of the show. Like, is this Instagram official? Could you be Instagram official? Are we Instagram official? Then we did 90 seconds on Cardi B. And I didn't have anything on Cardi B except for a free suggestion to those who listen to Felger and Maz. And this is Tuesday morning, June 3rd. I said, Mike, you need to have Maz just print out for him lyrics to WAP and just slide it across face down in the studio and tell him, hey, just need a favor. It's a new read. When we start, you just got to read this and block out whatever you need to. So anyway, he does that in between the breaks, reads it for himself. Never heard the song. Now a big fan and very happy to be Instagram official. So yeah, look,
congrats to the happy couple.
Yes, congrats to them. My only response when we did a segment on this was the bar right now is Jordan Hudson. So if she can just clear that, I'm fine. Like, it's not a thing until it becomes a thing. So I'm not worried. But I had curious if mid-November, they play the Falcons here or something. Is she going to be huffing it up Route 1? Granted, of course, in a limo, maybe she'll take a helicopter. I don't know. Like the rest of us to come see him play at 1:00. That to me makes it official more than the IG.
As long as Pablo Torre isn't doing 3 podcasts, 4 whatever it is on this relationship, then I'm happy for them. But if Pablo Torre gets involved, then it's a mess. Yeah.
So you're on Team Simmons then, as we continue just to talk about.
No. I don't take sides on that one. I'm just saying that, like, if Pablo Torre is doing a podcast about your relationship, then things.
Trouble.
Yeah, there's trouble.
Yeah,
trouble's afoot.
All right, no trouble yet. The trouble, of course, for Stefon Diggs was this white powder on a boat. And this came up last week when I was away for personal reasons. You were there. Practice was at Cox. Did a great job. And then I was like, I had no idea this was going on. And you and I didn't really talk about it until yesterday when I was like, would you say in the Patch Chat podcast, which everyone should listen to, your answer was like, I just don't know how the video got leaked, but we stopped there. So what else would you have said that I just kept asking for your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, my biggest reaction is like, how do you allow this video to get out? Because I'm sure that this happens with pro athletes all the time, like these sort of situations, but you don't know about it or see it because a video isn't spread across the internet a day later. Beyond that, I mean, like, I don't know. I have a hard time like rallying against a guy. Like I said, like most pro athletes are probably doing this. I think it's dumb that a video was allowed to come out, that like this was happening when someone was clearly like shooting this on an iPhone or whatever it was. But I also don't really know if the league can intervene on this one because no one knows for sure what was in those bags unless someone comes out and hands them over the NFL or anything like that. So it feels like not much is going to happen here. But from a Patriots perspective, it's like, first of all, we don't want you in that situation in the first place. And second of all, for God's sake, don't let a video come out about it. So I can understand like if there's some frustration from the Patriots side, but I also understand why Diggs is still on the team and why he's practicing this week.
Yeah, and I can already hear the click-clack of the YouTube comments being like, talk about football. Why do we wait 10 minutes to talk about football? Right. The Diggs part, as it relates to the boat incident, which again is just about a week old. We're a week away from Memorial Day weekend. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport said last night the Patriots have no plans to cut him. Right. Because, of course, in the dead period of radio discourse here in Boston, this just gets taken to the utmost extreme. And now, granted, Scott Zolak throw a lot of gas on that fire on Friday going, yeah, I think it's on the table. Well, right. Tom Curran, our pal, came over with a giant extinguisher yesterday for NBC Sports Boston and just said, Scott said it's on the table. Now it's not. I am reporting it is not on the table. I never believed it was on the table, particularly this early. And again, as I said in my last episode, what Stefon Diggs did, presumably, allegedly, as much as you can tell from that video, just took what we all did for the most part of Memorial Day weekend to a much higher extreme and then did the stupid thing of having it get leaked. So the other caveat I would add is if you and I are writing another what the F happened story at the end of the season and what went wrong, like this is going to be in there. But we are so far away from that. And he's far too valuable to go anywhere that I just think the discourse got so out of hand and so extreme, so dramatic that we lost the point of, man, he looks good on Instagram, to bring it back to IG. But when we saw him yesterday at practice, he looked even better in person. And this was stunning to me. Like I put almost 100%. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say 100%, but certainly almost. Like obviously he's still not out there in team drills, but we're watching him out there in individual drills. We're watching him during team drills when he's working off to the side. But my comparison is that, like, compare this to what Kendrick Bourne was doing last spring, which was nothing. And Stefon Diggs is older than Kendrick Bourne was last year. And they suffered their ACL injuries right around the exact same time the previous season. So to give the timeline, Kendrick Bourne injured his ACL or tore his ACL in late October of 2023. And then he missed 4 games of the 2024 season before returning. And he wasn't doing anything last spring. Stefon Diggs tore his ACL in late October of the 2024 season. And he's out there cutting, running fast, looking good during these individual drills. Not 100%, probably won't see 100% until the summer. But just the fact that he's out there at all doing these things right now, as long as there's no setbacks, paints a really good picture that like he would be good to go for week 1, it looks like right now. And obviously, like, Mike Vrabel's not going to say that. No one on the team's going to say that because they don't want to set expectations for him. But like, it would be a surprise if he's doing everything that he's doing right now and if he's not ready for week 1.
Yes, he's definitively ahead of schedule. Like all we had until yesterday, watching him on the field, again, in OTA practice, as you said, and this is the big part, he's not competing in team drills. Like there's no defense in any of the activities that he participated in yesterday. There's running on air, just running. There's running and cutting. There's working off of press and drill work. And then there's catching some passes from Drake Maye. And he led off all of those drills, which I think is minor but notable because it's, again, June 3rd. The Bourne comparison is such a great one because Stefon Diggs tore his ACL October 27th, 2024. Bourne was October 29th, 2023. Bourne had someone that he had lived with him for months, a physical therapist, to do double time. And this is sometimes just the difference in anatomy. Like not all ACL tears are the same. Achilles tears is we're all hoping and praying that Jason Tatum is not going to suffer the same fate as Kobe and all these other guys who've had it in the NBA. The point is that this now accelerates the timeline in a way that you had to believe that the reporting from Adam Schefter and whoever he was talking to was entirely accurate. I've seen it now. I believe it. The gap, I don't have to believe as much as what I've seen with my eyes, which makes me wonder, given the language in his contract that stipulates he gets basically nothing until he passes a physical. Patriots did a very good job protecting themselves in this deal. Is there a chance, not doctors, either of us, that he could pass a physical in what is now about a month and a half, so 8.5 months away from this ACL tear, which would then force them to pay him and basically commit in a way that right now they're probably like, of course we don't want to put a ring on this. He was just in a boat on Memorial Day weekend with pink powder. You know what I mean? Is that a bigger date, that physical?
I don't know, because like when you sign him, I think you have to imagine that like he's going to be on the team. Like I don't think that you sign a guy to that contract and they're like, oh, like let's play it safe and see what, like, yeah, obviously they played it a little bit safe with this physical, but like if they had any doubts, then they would just like cut him now. I don't think that you're worried about this that much based on what happened on the boat. Like the guy's been in the NFL for how many years at this point? Like 10 years.
Yeah.
And he hasn't caught, like, he's obviously like, he's been a little bit outspoken at times, but he hasn't been like a huge problem on or off the field. So I think that you just have to trust in what you did, like believe in what you did when you signed the guy and act as if you want him on the team and believe he'll be on the team. So I don't know. I know that there's a lot of people speculating after the boat incident that who knows what his future is going to be. I never took it that serious. Like, I don't know. Like, they signed the guy. He's been in the building. He's been at practice. Like, you've got to imagine he's gonna be on the team in week 1.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. And I think also if he is ahead of schedule and you have this 6 weeks of dead time, which we will all get to enjoy coming up before training camp takes over in football for the rest of our lives, so like in January at least, he just knows he has to be in his best behavior. And what I'm thinking is if the physical is passed, it's not like, oh my God, he's on the team and there's drama. No, it's just that's another check mark for him to feel emboldened in a way that if he feels like his leverage over the team as being this incredibly valuable receiver, perhaps your second, third, whatever best player, if he's that healthy and that good, well, what does that mean in the locker room? Because there's a real void here, given all the guys they just released, and we're going to get to David Andrews in a second and all the practice observations for that type of leadership. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not saying he's going to try to seize that void in a very Jordan Hudson-esque way to make a power grab. But you pass a physical, you feel back because of all the work that he's put in, and then you get paid because you pass that physical. That's a little bit different dynamic than like, hey, you don't have to show up, you're rehabbing, and we're only going to have you in part-time drills. Like that part I'm curious about, because I think the leash, however bad you think the incident was, and I'm closer to you, and I think this was made a much bigger deal than it really was. Mike Vrabel nonetheless kind of like pulled the leash back a little bit, I think, from this.
Right.
I don't think you have to, even if there are zero plans to release him and they shouldn't.
And I do think that, yeah, Diggs would be the unquestioned leader in that room based on the success that he's had throughout his career, his age. So yeah, there is a level of concern that, like, if there's no punishment whatsoever, then younger wide receivers on the roster could like feel emboldened or feel like they could get away with the same types of things. So that's what you want to avoid. So yeah, I mean, that would be the only concern. But I also think that there's like other good guys in that room who can set a good example. But it is tough when your number one leader is having these videos leak. But as long as nothing else happens, I don't think, like we're saying, it's that huge of a deal. It doesn't reach that level.
And the leadership part is right. Shouts to Tom Carroll of WEI, who tweeted this video out of him working hand in hand as much as Todd Downing, the receivers coach, with Jalen Polk on ways to kind of beat press, or when you get to the top of the route, swipe a corner's hands away. So like that stuff is, often floated this time of year. Oh, the leadership's so great, the culture, blah, blah, blah. Like you figure it out when times are tough. And Vrabel said this, and times can get tough in training camp. We'll know more then than we do now about Stefon Diggs. But the little that you can see, like that part is there because you can see him trying to impart wisdom, techniques, experience on the younger guys, who of course are going to look at him being like, oh, you're freaking Stefon Diggs. Of course I'm going to listen to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, David Andrews, among those leaders that I mentioned that were let go, his retirement press conference was yesterday. The timing of this is not surprising in that, he gets cut a couple of months ago. Last month, or actually now 6 weeks ago in mid-April, he's at the event we had at Vitamin C, raising money for your campaign with LS, and tells the small crowd there, yeah, man, I can't really throw the ball to my son in the backyard because my shoulder's so messed up, which says I can't really play anymore. The ceremony was yesterday. Tribute videos from a bunch of ex-teammates. Dante Scarnecchia came back. There were some old teammates in the crowd, some new current players, Josh McDaniels, Mike Vrabel, Elliot Wolf, everybody. David Andrews' 10-year career starts with the 2 Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. And a guy who was an undrafted free agent, Robert Kraft, in his own address said, like, from day one, you knew David was different. For me, more probably because I overlap with him starting in 2018, that second Super Bowl. My personal memories and thoughts of David Andrews are going to be the literal center and rock of a locker room where everything else was swirling around him starting in 2022. In his last 3 years with the Patricia Judge disaster and the practice that we all watched going, that might have been the worst practice I've ever seen from an NFL team. Yeah. And it's not the coaches standing up after that. It's number 60, barking and screaming. And the essence of his message, as I later learned, was like, look, we know that the coaches are basically fucking up. We have to give them time. There's no room here to bitch about them. We can't do anything about that. We need to do, as Belichick would say, our jobs. And that's it. And frankly, it didn't get better. Like they go 8-9 that season. That's cool. We were 4-13 the next year. Belichick gets let go. He comes back. Gerard Mayo's here. We all know what that was. It was 4-13. The leadership he showed in the example daily of the toughness and the culture, like that guy is as good of a leader. Forget my time in New England, that I've been around covering sports in maybe my entire life. And that's a guy you can't replace. And I'm personally going to really miss, and I think the Patriots will too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got a lot of great memories of David Andrews. Like, and first of all, starting things off, like I think us all as media members back in 2015 were rooting for David Andrews to succeed when it was clear that like he was competition for that center position just because he was a much easier guy to talk to than the previous center, Brian Stork. Not to tell tales out of school, but no, David Andrews was always very approachable, great guy. I left the beat in 2021 and 2022 to go to PFF for like a national gig. So I had a previous relationship with David Andrews. He knew who I was because I was in the locker room every day from 2015 to 2019, all that stuff. But when Hallie did get sick, when my daughter got sick with leukemia, like he was a guy in the locker room. He was really the only guy in the locker room who would like check in on me and see how I was doing and everything like that. So just from a personal standpoint, that meant a lot to me. Him coming to the event this off season meant a ton because he had already been released. Didn't probably really want to answer questions from reporters, be around reporters, all those types of things, but he did it out of the kindness of his heart. It meant a lot to me as well. So just a really great guy overall. And I already said this on the Pats Chat podcast, so I won't say it. I won't go as long, but like I feel very fortunate having covered this team for as long as I have to have covered so many great people like David Andrews, Devin and Jason McCourty, Matthew Slater, Deron Harmon. Like those are the guys that come up like top of mind for me, that like the relationship with them feels like it extends a little bit past that of like reporter player. Because there's a lot of players out there that I've covered who you don't get a personal relationship with at all. But like just the fact that I've got to cover that many great guys over my time on the beat really makes me feel fortunate. And David Andrews is right there with the rest of them.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And sometimes oftentimes it's better to show than tell. And that example of him showing up at the event was not just like a quick text, hey, can you make this?
Right.
Because I'd gone back and forth with him. You and I were at the owners meeting, so maybe like 10, 14, 20 days beforehand, and said, hey, this is the event. This is the date. Can you come on down? This is the deal. Just like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, hang out. He's like, I'm trying to make it. And the next day was Good Friday. So he was going down to see family for Easter in Georgia. He's like, we have a super early flight, 2 young boys getting packed. And our event was like 7:30. So once I shared the last bit of information and he had told me just then via text, like, this is our deal, I didn't hear from him. And then right as the event is about to start, he texts me and just says, be there in 10. And I would have completely understood, given everything I just listed off, if he just never showed up, because he's been generous with his time. And to your point, even when you were away after Hallie had relapsed, like they have this big win at Pittsburgh, their best win aside from draft position, late in 2023. He's like, hey, how's Doug doing? Like, it's just dead serious in his eyes. Stopped them at all the celebration. Reporters come in asking the questions, blah, 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 on a Thursday night. And I was just like, whoa. And I got to know him better. As a story I've tweeted out a million times about going fishing. And we talked a lot about the end and the beginning of his life off the field with his family and building that. So anyway, if you want to know him as someone now that I can say I've had beers with at 8 a.m., shots of Dr. McKillicuddy's at 11 because this captain could not catch anything. Read the story, get to know David Andrews. And obviously you and I are very, very glad that we did. Just a great guy.
One last thing, and this is unfortunate that this is like a lasting memory of David Andrews because he won 2 Super Bowls. He was part of some amazing teams. Like another lasting memory is just like him being the guy after every loss in 2023, being the first guy to come out to the podium post game and have to answer questions from media. And for years and years and years, when the Patriots were good, that person was Bill Belichick. They start losing, and then Bill Belichick started taking his time after games to speak with the media, which meant that players had to come out first. And David Andrews was always that first guy, always handled questions extremely professionally, politely, when like that was probably the last thing in the world that he wanted to be doing. And he handled it with the utmost professionalism. So really give a lot of credit to him for that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's not end on that note. Let's end on the fact we can agree he's like a deserved member of the Patriots Hall of Fame one day. That's a guarantee. It's locked. Yeah. Start stitching the jacket now. Patriots 2010s all-decade team. Also just a good center. And like a good player. And as we detailed, and everyone's favorite cliche at the end, and like, we'll just call it a football funeral. Like, oh, he's a good player and an even better person. No, that's real. And you don't have to take it from me and Doug. The tribute videos that came in yesterday that we were watching I think this is a true reflection, right? Like when
Yeah.
people
Oh, yeah.
don't need you anymore and you're still a friend, will they take time out of their day to
Right.
do something on your behalf with no benefit to them? These are the people that did that, shooting a video to say goodbye to David Andrews at this ceremony. Tom Brady, Gronk, Julian Edelman, James White, Joe Tooney, Shaq Mason, Duron Harmon, Devin McCourty, Jason McCourty. That's half of the list. Like they're maybe less than half of the list.
Yeah.
All of those guys loved him in a way that we didn't get to when we weren't teammates with him. But you don't say this about everybody. I don't think I've gone this flowery about many, if any, players in my life. And it's not about the beers at AM. It's just about who he was. So I'm glad he got the send off he's deserved. And it sounds like he's going to stay local. I would guarantee you also that he will coach one day. I hope it's just in high school down the road and not, college somewhere where he's subjecting his family to all the travel and back and forth.
For sure.
Which on that note, we can't find an end to the David Andrews conversation, but I just want to share this. He did go down to Chapel Hill and speak with Bill. And I think there was an unofficial recruiting pitch there. And he did have interest from other teams like that. Those are legitimate things, complicated by some contract stuff. But when he chose to retire, health is the biggest part. But second to that, there was a chance to do other things right away, and he chose not to. All right.
Also looked like he's lost about 50 pounds. So good for him on that regard, too.
Handsome guy. Patriots OTA practice. Unfortunately, not as exciting as Prizepicks. Prizepicks back this week. Friend of the pod. As I always ask, please support the people that support us. And along the way, you can have a ton of fun because Prizepicks remains the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prizepicks has daily fantasy sports accessible to all. It is the simplest game out there. It is the best game out there. Here's how it works. Whether you're looking at baseball or basketball, or we've got another week or two of hockey, you get a list of players at prizepicks.com. Every player comes with a stat. It could be hits, goals, runs, innings pitched, strikeouts, whatever. You can pick more or you pick less, and you build a lineup of 2 to 6 players, each with these stats, each going more or each going less, and that's it. It's you against the numbers, which don't change. They're right there. I did this over the weekend, went to see a buddy, went to a couple of Sox games in Atlanta. Sox sucked on Saturday. I still had fun because I wanted Prizepicks with some things that frankly felt very easily. So if you know ball, and there's only one series left in the playoffs for basketball, one left for hockey, pull up Prizepicks, and when you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You do not need to win to get that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Along with all the weekly promotions, there's a Taco Tuesday. I still don't understand what the tacos are doing in there, but I understand when I get onto Prizepicks, I have a very good chance to turn my sports knowledge into money. So do this same thing right now. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. You get $50. I'll just say it again, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Okay, who ran practice yesterday? Who had the best day? For the last OTA practice open to the media, the Patriots have a couple more this week, but as of Monday, June 2nd, who had the best day?
I mean, the honest answer is probably undrafted wide receiver Efton Chism, which is, I don't know, maybe a good and bad sign for the Patriots. But Drake Maye was much better. But I mean, Efton Chism caught 7 passes on 7 targets. Like he was the most targeted receiver out there. He had the most catches out there. And it seems like the team is pretty impressed with him as well. Like he is he caught passes from all 3 quarterbacks, Drake Maye, Joshua Dobbs, and Ben Wooldridge, which means that he's at times sharing the field with Drake Maye, which is a really good sign for an undrafted wide receiver. And one of the reasons that I've heard he's able to do that is that he was able to pick up the offense very quickly from a mental standpoint, which is a really good sign as well for a young rookie wide receiver in a Josh McDaniels offense, because it hasn't always been the easiest offense to learn. So clearly the coaching staff trusts him enough to put him out there early and often with all 3 quarterbacks. He's getting open, and the team believes that he's been extremely consistent over these first 3 weeks of practice. So I like, not to throw water on it, but we have seen players stand out during OTAs and mini camp and early in training camp before the pads come on, and then disappear a little bit when the pads come on. We saw it last year with Javon Baker at times, where he was really good in the early part of the summer, but then kind of disappeared a little bit. So the real test, the next test for Efton Chism, is that he can do this when the pads come on in late July, early August. But for now, the coaching staff is trusting him. His quarterbacks are trusting him. And like, this is truly a wide open wide receiver room. And we can get into that a little bit more later on in this podcast. But like, based on how the wide receiver room is constructed, really the only person you can lock into a starting role right now is Stefon Diggs, assuming he's going to be healthy. There's really no, and it truly feels like everyone else on the roster is competing for those other two starting roles, including Efton Chism. So like I know it sounds insane for me to say like this undrafted rookie wide receiver could be a starter, but like anyone at wide receiver on the Patriots roster could be a starter right now. And Efton Chism is getting the same opportunities as those other guys. And in about half the players on the roster, like more opportunities than half those guys. So yeah, I mean, he had a really good practice. He's had a really good spring, and we'll see if that can continue into the summer.
Efton Chism, absolutely the player of the day yesterday. Undrafted kid, Eastern Washington, FCS All-American, all very cool. I did not give much of a shot, if at all, to make the roster. My mind has not really changed, but the percentage points are going up because so often on this podcast and other places, you have to do the qualifiers. No pads, voluntary, blah, 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 this and that. It's required. It's necessary. It's context that tells you what's going on. The only counter to that is what I say when people get on teams that get off to fast starts and they're like, oh, well, look at the strength of schedule. They're not playing anyone. They're not beating anyone. Do you think they picked the schedule? Okay, like you can only play the teams in front of you. Efton Chism right now can only practice in the practices put on the schedule in front of him. So without pads, yes. Without Marcus Jones even in the slot yesterday. So we got a lot of Marcellus Style when he was in the slot. When he was outside, there was no Carlton Davis, and we'll get to the rest of the attendance here in a second. Like, he played really well. And the fact that they trusted him to be outside, which is a requisite in the Josh McDaniels system where the guys move from X and Z and into the slot, he performed, which I don't think he can live there in the NFL. This is a small guy who ran a 4.71. And even if you think the scout there had some personal grudge because he's dating that scout's ex-girlfriend or for whatever reason, like, it's still a big jump to go to like 4.65 and ask him to play outside of the NFL at 5'11" or whatever it is. The point, though, is the 7 catches on 7 targets, 1 from Drake Maye, and that he was ahead of guys like Javon Baker and has played better than fellow rookie Kyle Williams. This is not to project. It's just to say that in the preseason schedule, as it were, in front of Efton Chism right now, where there are no pads and it's flag football, he's looked great. And honestly, I don't want to do, there wasn't a close second. There wasn't. Like, Drake Maye had a good day. But we led off with the undrafted kid out of Eastern Washington.
Yeah. Who are your 6 wide receivers if the season starts today?
So he's not on them just here, just to start. Yeah. It would be Stefon Diggs, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, Mac Hollins, Kyle Williams, and then honestly pick from Jalen Polk, who I think would be the favorite right now, Javon Baker, Efton Chism, and whomever else. But the 5 for me are I feel still pretty good about. The interesting part is, though, do you think that if Chism does make the roster, like makes them an offer they cannot refuse, that means Demario Douglas gets traded or otherwise can't survive and function in the same receivers room as a guy who basically also will only play the slot?
Personally, I would not do that just because Demario Douglas has like a playmaking ability that I think like other wide receivers on the roster don't. So even if he's not your starting slot, I think you can use him on end arounds. I think you can use him on like gadget plays. Like, I think that he could be Marcus Jones from a couple of years ago in your offense. And like, that's not a bad option to have as like a 4th or 5th wide receiver. It is tough right now to pick out 5. I think like Stefon Diggs, Mac Hollins, and Kyle Williams are, I guess, your locks. But then like, yeah, so you've got Demario Douglas, I would have on there personally. Kayshon Boutte, I think I would have on there. And then you're talking about Baker, Bourne, Chism, and Polk. So like, we're not lying when we say this is like a crowded wide receiver group. Maybe they keep 7. They kept, I think, 7 or 8 at the beginning of last season. So maybe they keep 7. But yeah, like Chism still has to prove himself. And basically, I think that like, he almost has to prove himself as like a starter to make this team. So we'll see if he can do that. But yeah, it's still a long way to go to like ensure that he's got a roster spot. And if I was doing a 53-man roster projection, which I'll probably do at the end of the spring, I don't know if he would be on there right now, but like he's making a very strong case. And the fact that like Kayshon Boutte didn't catch a pass in the OTA Open the Media last week. I think he got one pass in team drills yesterday?
He had 2. It was a corner, a deep corner, which is a nice throw from Drake Maye, and a slant route early in practice.
So he caught 2, and like Kyle Williams, like these guys are usually only catching like 1 or 2 passes or maybe 2 or 3 per practice. Like for a guy like Chism to catch 7, the context is important that like most of it was against Marcellus Dial or like backup cornerbacks, but still like no one else, I don't think anyone else in front of the media has caught 7 passes in one of these sessions. So it shows a lot, and we'll see what else it means over the rest of the spring and summer. But he's knocking down the door for a roster spot.
While we're on the wide receivers, the other top targets yesterday were Douglas, who caught all 4 targets, and Travion Henderson, who had 3. And I want to get into the running backs. But yeah, the receivers room is very much in flux. I think it very well could be until the end of training camp, which honestly is a good thing. You know, like guys hung on the roster the last 2 years, and I would even argue Kayshon Boutte to some degree as a rookie, not last year, because they just had no other options. The Patriots have options now. They might not be great, and this all, of course, assumes that Stefon Diggs remains at the top, but this is a good thing for them. Matt Collins,
I think competition. I think back end of roster competition is important.
Mm-hmm.
I would like them to decide who they want to be their top 3 wide receivers, if not entering training camp, like within a few days. Because I would want Drake Maye to get as much chemistry as possible with those top 3 guys. Because like we've seen it over the last few years where it's like, okay, so they've got this rotation of like 4 or 5 starting wide receivers, and then no one really builds a great rapport with the quarterback. Guys are constantly being shuffled in and out of the depth chart, like starting role. It just hasn't worked now for like 4 years. So I think it's going to be difficult to do, but like these guys they've played all spring. Give them a week into training camp and then decide your 3 starters and roll from there, and then decide who the other 3 guys on the roster are going to be. But like, I don't know. I'm just so tired of seeing like, okay, we have no idea who the top 3 wide receivers are, and then it goes poorly during the season.
Would you take a functioning left tackle or 3 receivers that you can point to in late July and be like, they're the guys who are going to be there in late October?
Wait, what was that?
Would you rather a left tackle, like things that you're tired of seeing?
Oh yeah, no, I mean like, yeah, I'd rather a left tackle, but I still like, it's just been way too many years of this where it's like Kendrick Bourne being a starter one week, then benched the next. And like, that wasn't only last year, that was happening in 2022 as well. Like this dates back pretty far now at this point.
I am with you. I just think it feels like a pipe dream given Stefon Diggs' health and the fact that it is a new offense. So the idea that you know exactly what you have with these players in this scheme, and for some of them catching passes from a new quarterback, is just going to take time to develop. So I think that will lend itself all to rotations and the coaches wanting to get good looks at other guys. Yeah. I would say after the second preseason game is when I want to know who those guys are. And there's a quick turnaround because they'll have joint practices with the Commanders, and then their first preseason game, joint practices with the Vikings, second preseason game. And then there are 5 days and they're like, yeah, everyone who's not going to make the team is going to play against the Giants in the quickest turnaround I've seen in the preseason in a long time. Because I did think if we want to decide now, if we want to do this June 3rd, Stefon Diggs at X, DeMario Douglas in the slot, and then fight it out at Z. Like if you really want to hit fast forward, to me, I think that's a discussion.
Yeah. And I think the Z would, like, ultimately, if the season starts today, come down between like Bourne and Boutte, probably, as being the guys who are like most ready to start in the NFL right now. And like Bourne has the most experience, so I guess I'd throw Bourne in there. But yeah, I'd like to see some belief in like who Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel really think are like the top 3 guys, and just roll with it. But like you said, that might be a pipe dream.
And the point about Bourne and Boutte that I want to dismount off of and get to attendance, and then Drake Maye and the rest of our notes, is they don't contribute on special teams. Like that's just what it is. I mean, Boutte has been thrown in there here and there in OTAs, but Bourne is off to the side when he's there, and he wasn't yesterday. Right. Just playing catch and working with the staff or position coach, whatever. So if they fall back to the pack from where you just projected them as basically the number 3 and 4 receiver right now on the depth chart, and we know they're going to have to fight to earn those spots, the tie is going to go to the guy who contributes on special teams, which we know is going to be Matt Collins. Will have to be Efton Chism in some part. And then who knows about Baker, but he was on those coverage teams last year, and Polk and Williams, who's obviously going to stick, and everybody else. So that's where things stand. All right, attendance. Bourne was not there, not injury related, so nothing to worry about there. Carlton Davis was not seen. Matt Collins, Marcus Jones, Anfernee Jennings, Travion Williams, the newly signed running back, formerly the Bengals, Tyrese Robinson, who got some starting reps, as you and others reported last week at left guard. Jelani Tavai got hurt, and he went down for about a minute or two, clutching behind his left knee. So it's hard to tell from more than 100 yards away whether this was a high calf issue, maybe it was his hamstring, but it looked pretty damn serious because a bunch of guys were on their knees, helmets down. He gets helped off to a training table behind both of the practice fields and then just disappears. I can tell you he left the building yesterday on crutches, but it's unclear exactly how severe the injury is right now. So he's not getting carted off. He's not going to the hospital. And this is a guy who I think has been more involved than we expected because of all the linebackers that they signed or re-signed to bigger deals. But those are the bigger deals. Limited with Stefon Diggs, Mike Onwenu, Kyle Duggar, Jalen Polk, Vadarian Lowe, Jared Wilson. Of that group, really only Mike Onwenu saw any amount of action in team drills, including walkthroughs. So just 11 on 11, but there's no competition here. Everybody else was completely held out. And Austin Hooper really didn't do anything, but he was there. So that's what we saw. What was the most interesting part of all that?
Tavai is interesting because I think that linebacker room is still slightly wide open. Like there's some question about Tavai's fit. I think that you can kind of throw Marte Mapu into that mix at linebacker as well, where I think he's got a better shot of making the roster than he did at safety. But the other one that stands out to me a little bit is Anfernee Jennings. I believe I thought I saw on Instagram that he was celebrating something over the weekend. Like maybe that's why he missed his practice. I have no idea why he missed the practice. But at the end of practice, they split up the groups and walkthroughs into like let's call it like a first and second team group. And then like the third team and practice squad or whatever it is. And Anfernee Jennings, despite all the starting experience that he has and Bill Belichick's defense and Gerard Mayo's defense, has been in that secondary group, that like third string group. So it's just like, I don't know, obviously you don't want to let that dictate how you're handling voluntary practices, but like that does show you as a player that the coaching staff is saying like, hey, you got to work your way back up the depth chart. Like you're not, what you did in the past here doesn't really matter. And I do think there's some question once again about his fit in the defense. If they want to be more of an attacking front, he's more of an edge setter. He's a guy who can kind of hold his ground against a tight end or offensive tackle on the edge of the defense. Not necessarily the greatest pass rusher, not the most like the greatest attacking player. So that one was a little bit curious to me. Maybe he's dealing with something, who knows what exactly it is, but like it's been pretty clear over the first couple of weeks of spring practices that he's a guy who has to still prove himself to this, I don't know, to this new coaching staff, because like they brought in Harold Landry, they brought in Caleb Von Chasen, Keon White's in there. They drafted Braden Swinson. I think there's a spot for Anfernee Jennings on this roster, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to be guaranteed at this point.
No, I agree. And it's a reminder that when, you hear things when a new coach comes in and it's like, oh, it's a clean slate.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's a good thing. Other times Anfernee Jennings is like, I was building something here. Why did you knock it all away?
Right.
Well, man, it doesn't matter whether you had something or not. It's a new coach. It's a new scheme. And that man has all the power and will make the decision whether Anfernee Jennings is here or not, despite being re-signed just over a year ago. Okay, Drake Maye. This was the other big headline aside from Efton Chism. He had his best day of OTAs among those that have been open to the media. So the ones that we've seen are 3 out of 8 practices so far. 3 out of 7 practices so far. The 8th is today. Foxborough, 14 of 16. He started 5 of 5 in the opening team period, including a left to right crossing route that Christian Gonzalez tipped into the air, still found Demario Douglas. He had 4 other completions to 4 different receivers, a stick route, a swing route, a comeback, and a slant. Kyle Williams, Kayshon Boutte were in there. Next period, takes a sack, throws the ball away against pressure and a couple short completions. Then he starts to get going. And this I'm going to bring up in a second, but it's not just that he got more aggressive, but aggressive with plays that they were running. In the third period, hit Boutte on the deep corner route that we already talked about. Chism and Douglas on dig routes over the middle. Douglas did a really nice job of coming back to the ball, which is different for him multiple times last year, just losing completions because he wasn't aggressive enough. Last stretch, check down to Hunter Henry in the right flat. Henry's only catch. Douglas again on a crossing route. Stevenson had this fingertip grab, which I don't know if it was a stutter and go, a wheel, but he's down the left sideline, 25 yards away. Outstanding grab and an adjustment against man-to-man coverage. And then Jalen Hawkins broke up this pass that was slightly behind Kyle Williams on a deep cross from left to right. So he stepped up nicely in the pocket. The reason that I liked yesterday's performance and ultimately gave it a B+, and I don't care to elaborate, it's just what it was and how I saw it, is they were running plays that were not only new to him, right, but basically new to Josh McDaniels. Yeah. So here's the quarterback making adjustments in sights, and some of this has to do with personnel, other has to do with formations. We can't get into big specifics, but this is new stuff for Patriots fans, okay? Even those who watched every snap of the Josh McDaniels era. And Drake Maye is out there making plays.
Yeah, and I mean, I think early in practice when he started off 5 for 5, it was like, okay, yeah, but it's a bunch of like easy stuff, shallow stuff, whatever. He did uncork it a little bit at the end of practice, like not anything crazy deep, but like he's throwing downfield, which I think really adds to the context of him going 14 of 16 in this practice, because it wasn't all simple, easy completions. It wasn't all check downs. So Mike Hurley, my podcast partner, has made this point. I'm going to steal it from him. Like, you've seen a improvement, like significant improvement now, practice to practice from Drake Maye, where the first practice that we saw, it was about as bad as you would expect out of a starting quarterback. 4 interceptions the first 8 attempts, not all completely his fault, but like 4 interceptions is 4 interceptions. Second practice, accuracy seemed a bit off, didn't have any turnovers, but like didn't totally look like Drake Maye out there in the second practice that we saw. And then going 14 for 16 is like Tom Brady OTAs numbers. And I'm not saying that he was Tom Brady out there, but like that's what you would expect from a starting quarterback in OTAs that are unpadded. But he's doing this with a new offensive coordinator, with new pieces around him, and as you mentioned, plays that even the offensive coordinator isn't used to running. So yeah, I think B+ is fair. Like, he could have been slightly better. Like the pass that was behind Mario Douglas, he was probably a little lucky that wasn't picked off by Christian Gonzalez. And he was definitely lucky that went for a completion, because like usually when the defense gets their hands on the ball, you're not catching that. So, but I mean, obviously even 13 of 16 with an interception still would have been pretty good day, but there was a play where he got lucky. There's some short passes early on, did uncork it a little bit at the end. And overall, just like, it was what everyone wanted to see out of Drake Maye, because you didn't want to write for another week like, oh, the offense kind of was stagnant. They struggled. They were sputtering out there. Like, this was an offense that looked like it was comfortable out there by week 3.
Well, and to be clear, if they sucked, we would have said as much. It just would have.
No, 100%. But it's not fun to write that 3 weeks in a row. Yeah.
Right. And to say, well, we still don't know anything. Like, at least here, you can say they're running new plays, which to provide better detail. We spoke with the assistants before practice, and remind me or put a pin in this in case there were any comments that we didn't talk about already that we should definitely bring up before the episode ends. Josh McDaniels, when I asked him, hey, I don't know if this is fair, but can you put a number, like a percentage on the chunk of the playbook that's new to you because you're getting stuff from Thomas Brown and Todd Downing and Doug Marrone and not a bunch of fellow Patriot acolytes? And he's like, oh, I can't really do that. Talks for another minute. He goes, it's a good chunk, though. Like, there's stuff I'm familiar with. I can put it up on the chalkboard, but the idea of installing and implementing it, he doesn't really have that experience. So that's what I talk about when things are new, even to McDaniels, and Maye is just fine, which I would also say this progression that Hurley noted, you copied, and now I'm going to copy and paste again, mirrors what we saw in training camp last year. Like 2 weeks into training camp, you go back and read those articles, okay? Drake Maye was not good. That was a fact. You can ask me, you can ask Doug, you can ask any fan who was there every single day. Just did not look great. By the end of training camp, obviously there was some clamoring for him to start week 1 because he was the best quarterback on the field. He's a special kid. And it's not just because of the arm or the mobility, but it's the processing. And so we're still learning what this new offense will look like. But even the newer parts, he's picking up in a way that's evident when McDaniels tells us, and this was one comment at least, he's not repeating mistakes really. Mm-hmm. Okay, we don't have to trust that. We can see it.
Yeah, and Josh McDaniels also didn't seem concerned about like the outside pressure that's on Drake Maye coming in this season after the season they had last year, that he needs to be better this year. And I talked to Thomas Brown, I talked to Ashton Grant. They both said that they feel like they've got a lot of say in what the offense is going to look like, and in the way of like shaping this offense. It's not just Josh McDaniels coming in and saying like, hey, this worked for me. We won 6 Super Bowls with this offense. Like, let's keep rolling it out there. I think that the point of bringing in all of these offensive assistants that Josh McDaniels had never worked with was to add different elements to the Josh McDaniels offense. And we're already seeing it out there. We'll see in season how often Josh McDaniels is actually calling those plays. But for now, they're implementing them in practice. I think that's a really good sign.
Yeah. Quickly on Joshua Dobbs, because he's the backup who thus far has, I would say, underwhelmed a little bit. He had a good day. Like let's be clear.
Yeah, for sure.
11 of 13, and he pretty much lived within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
His offense, we'll call it the second team unit, had to reset upon getting to the line and then coming back to the huddle a couple of times early in practice. But, in addition to the screens and the checkdowns, like a good day for him that should be noted. You want your backup quarterback to be playing well. This is not a competition between him and Drake Maye. He's there to be the emergency, and you would at least like the getaway vehicle to not have a flat tire. So far, things are doing okay.
And I would say that he was utilizing a lot of short passes over the last 2 practices as well, and not hitting them as frequently. And with a backup quarterback, you don't really want that guy to uncork it too often if he comes in the game. So this is probably what the offense would look like if Joshua Dobbs is in there.
Yeah. All right. Let's rip through my studs and duds and then offense, and you'd add anything that I missed or pick something that you want to expound upon. Drake Maye was a stud. Josh Minkins, who's undrafted rookie safety at Cincinnati, picked off fellow undrafted rookie Ben Wooldridge with the third team offense. Only interception of the day and made a nice return. Duds. Jaheim Bell. A lot of mailbag questions about Jaheim Bell. People who've asked those are going to be disappointed. He had 2 drops, and he caught just 1 of 5 targets, and he had another among those, in addition to the drops, 1 of those 5 hit his hands. It was a bit wide, didn't call it a drop, but he's only working with Dobbs and only working with Wooldridge. He has an uphill climb, in my opinion, to make this roster. Again, really playing because Austin Hooper was just chilling, and even then, Jack Westover, practice squad member a year ago, was playing ahead of him. John Parker Romo, incumbent kicker, another practice, more ground that he lost. He was 2 of 4 in kicks between 33 and 50 yards. Meanwhile, Andre Regales, who you're probably rooting for at home, was 4 of 4 on those same kicks between 33 and 50 yards. Running backs, I like what I saw from Andre Stevenson. 2 catches, 2 targets. He ripped off a long draw. He had that catch that I already described. And impressed, rotated a lot with Travion Henderson and Antonio Gibson. Henderson still has some strange drops, mostly like early in practice. I don't know if they're focused. I don't know what's going on. Didn't in team drills. The long speed and burst are still there. Stevenson called him a quick learner after practice. Not much on Len Larison. Sorry for the land stands. And overall, a busy day for the running backs who Josh McDaniels, I think when you talk about things where they might be new, again, we can't get into the details. I think the Patriots are prepared, at least because of their roster makeup and their willingness to adapt, to make the running backs more featured than you've seen before. Receivers, at least one practice, it was Booty, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, and Efton Chism, mostly with Maye. Again, no Diggs, no Bourne, no Jalen Polk in team drills. Douglas's 4 catches led all the receivers by far. Kyle Williams, to me, is still making catches on the same routes. It's not reason for alarm, but his first target was on a comeback route. They're all outbreakers. They're close to the sideline where he can threaten defenses with his speed. The breakups, as we saw, and this wasn't a great pass, but are on crossing routes. And Jalen Hawkins came over and batted this away and actually knocked him down. And Vrabel talked to Hawkins. But the point is, you'd like to see him have higher success rates on other routes like you did see in college. We talked a lot about Chism, tight ends. Again, not much here. CJ Dupree had 2 catches, including the first long ball of the day from Wooldridge. Offensive line, Will Campbell. A battle between Cole Strange and Wes Schweitzer, seemingly at left guard. My guess would be the rest of the line is Garrett Bradbury, Mike Onwenu, and then Morgan Moses, who's a little bit more involved, and Caden Wallace was kind of the swing tackle there.
Yeah, with Bell, I would actually there was 4 incompletions that hit his hands, because there was the one that Monty Rice broke up as well.
That's right.
So, not to crap on him too much, but with Jaheim Bell, he was a 7th round pick last year, was on the roster the whole year, and the fact that Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper are clearly ahead of them on the depth chart. And like right now, Jack Westover, who is an undrafted free agent who was signed from the Seahawks midway through the season, is playing over him. Definitely not a great sign. And I think that we will see a decent amount of like CJ Dupree and some of these undrafted guys competing for that third tight end spot as well. That's one that certainly has not been settled. And yeah, left guard certainly looks like currently right now, Cole Strange and Wes Schweitzer, leaders in the clubhouse. Like Tyrese Robinson was getting some reps there as well. But one guy that maybe we're just missing it, maybe we haven't seen it yet, maybe we'll see it at minicamp, but like Layden Robinson, who I think a lot of people assumed would be like the front runner for that left guard spot, has not been in the mix. He's been in the mix with like the third stringers so far. So that's been a little bit of a surprise, but it also is similar to the Anfernee Jennings conversation where it's like, it doesn't really matter what the past regime thought of you. If the current regime thinks of you a different way, then you might not get the opportunities that you expected. And we'll see how that left guard conversation shakes out. But like Wes Schweitzer, probably the guy that the coaching staff trusts the most since he worked with Todd Downing on the Jets. And Cole Strange, with that first round pedigree, probably still has the highest upside out of anyone else on the roster as a left guard, despite the fact that he never really flashed it in his first few seasons in the NFL. Still a guy who's got some potential. And if you want like the best possible offensive line, he might be your guy at left guard. But seems like that could be a competition that goes into training camp to figure out that spot.
The Layden Robinson point is a great one to bring up because, you know, I think people on the outside are rooting for him. And I don't know if there's a Layden Robinson or not. But the point is, you say, oh, he played last year, and they want to be physical. He's physical. They want to run the ball. He's a great run blocker. Well, sometimes your position coach, and I don't know this, might just look at the tape and be like, look, you got to earn it all over with me. Like, this is not going to be a Mike Vrabel call is what I'm saying, or Josh McDaniels call. Like, they trust Doug Marrone, to know what he's looking at and know what he wants to do and how to get there. And right now, at least for OTAs, Wes Schweitzer and Cole Strange, who also played a little bit of right guard, in addition to Mike Onwenu, are getting a head start on him because there's a big gap for Layden Robinson, in my opinion, to make up in pass protection. And he might make the year two leap and might prove all of us wrong. So it's not a bad thing he's down there. But I would just say before you jump to conclusions here or there, like these are position coaches' calls. And I think for OTAs, as I said last week, like Wes Schweitzer's going to start with a bump because he's a veteran. Yeah, he knows Todd Downing. He also is going to know the playbook better than the young guys. And if you just want everyone to have a shot to show what they can do, know where to be and what to do, you start with the veterans. Because if Layden Robinson screws up or someone at left guard and you get straight pressure up the middle to Drake Maye, well, that rep is lost for Drake Maye. You don't want that. You want guys who at least give, be able to be the pieces in the puzzle. So you get a look at the whole picture and whether you like it or not. So I'm glad you brought him up. But I don't know where that left guard position is going to go. Like that also might be a position battle that goes till the third preseason game.
Yeah, I think it very well could. And yeah, no, I mean it's we'll see how that all shakes out because Jared Wilson could be in the mix in there as well. Some other guys could do. So
yeah, and he's been limited. Third round center / guard, and they're pretty intent on keeping him a center for now, which I think is smart because he's not developmental player, but a player who got drafted as highly as he did, not because he played a ton of football at Georgia, but he's super athletic and played enough. So that makes sense.
I know you've only been at 2 practices, but you know how Morgan Moses works with younger players after practice?
Yeah, I kind of want to do a story about it, which is now me volunteering to any fellow beat reporters who listen to this, of which I know there are a few. Please do not steal this from me. This is me copywriting verbally that story idea.
I know you just mentioned Caden Wallace. Was Caden Wallace a full participant in this practice? He was, right?
Yes, I can tell. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's Morgan Moses has been working with a lot of guys after practice, a lot of young guys, but it's mostly been so far Will Campbell, DeMontre Jacobs, Marcus Bryant, and Jack Conley. So, I don't know. Caden Wallace is another young player. I think that ideally you'd want him to be your backup right tackle, but another guy who kind of probably has to start from scratch with this new coaching staff. And one last point on Layden Robinson, Gerard Mayo adored Layden Robinson. Yes. Like he would be overt with his praise on Layden Robinson. So I think that's probably a decent reason why Layden Robinson got as many reps as he did last season, is that Gerard Mayo truly believed in him. And if the new coaching staff does not feel the same way, then I don't think he will get those same opportunities. because of how much he struggled last year in pass protection.
Caden Wallace, since you brought him up, and again, glad you did. He also played some left tackle. So I think the vision for him as their swing tackle at least is peeking through. I don't know if that's definitive or not, but you can see why they would want that as a younger guy.
Right.
He's still got some development to do and missed most of last season due to injury and all the things that we know about him, besides the fact that he's played right tackle basically since high school. Right. We'll see where that goes. It is interesting. Yeah, because now that I think about it, when Morgan Moses is holding like post-practice like school, he's not often there. But
you kind of want him there, right?
Yeah, and maybe this is the case of a guy like, in a different way. Joe Milton saw himself as the starter here. It was like, Drake's only getting reps ahead of me because he was drafted first. It was like, well, buddy, the one time that you played is the game they wanted to lose. So they thought you were their ticket to tanking. And congrats, you proved them wrong. Caden Wallace might just think, well, I should be starting. I'm good enough. And I'm not here to knock anyone's ego or confidence, as Seth Wickersham detailed last week with me. Like, ego's a big ingredient for any professional athlete, and especially quarterbacks. But I don't know. I would want to listen to Morgan Moses has to say. I would listen to Morgan Moses talk about cooking, frankly. Man has some presence, some aura, as the kids say.
Yeah. No, for sure. And like, maybe it is like, yeah, maybe it makes it uncomfortable that he views Morgan Moses as competition. Maybe you don't. But like, I do think as a young player, even if you're competing with a veteran, you want to listen to that veteran and like have that veteran teach you as much as possible. So I don't know. Maybe there's a different reason why Caden Wallace isn't out there at the end of practice. But like, Demontre Jacobs is not a rookie, and he is a guy who clearly wants to learn from Morgan Moses as much as possible after practice and pick up some tips from him.
All right, enough offensive line talk. Let's do defense, and again, pick out what you like or think is interesting here. I like, in my recaps at the Herald, to start with, here were the top personnel during team periods. And part of the rules are that you cannot go explicitly, here were the starters and here were the combinations. But as Doug described earlier, like end of practice and even in the scout team walkthroughs, when they start to rehearse the plays they're later going to run at full speed, you can see who's going to be with the first and second team and who's not. If you want to know all those names, it's at thebostonherald.com. A couple that stood out to me in that regard, Braden Swinson, Jack Gibbons was there as a backup linebacker. They went deep in the defensive line. Joshua Farmer's in the mix as a rookie. Marcellus Dial got a ton of look at nickelback with no Marcus Jones, no Carlton Davis. And then Craig Woodson is still in there and very, very active in the safety group. So statistically, Josh Minkins and the only pick. Pass breakups, Christian Gonzalez, Jalen Hawkins, Joshua Farmer. Really nice instincts on a screen that got completed anyway. But I'm giving him credit. He got his hands on the ball. That's all we care about. And Monty Rice. Would-be sacks is the most ambiguous, widest variance stat that any of us keep at training camp.
Yeah.
You only get one look at a play. If you don't know what happened, you can't put it down. Here's who I thought got sacks, which also is just defenders pulling up at the quarterback. K'Lavon Chaisson, Craig Woodson on an unblocked blitz, Jeremiah Farms Jr., Isaiah Aiton, backup defensive tackle, and then team, which is like multiple guys get to Drake May. I don't know who in a real game setting would have dropped them. Among the defensive line, quiet day for Milton Williams and Christian Barmore. If they had bigger days, we would have talked about them already. But it's clear still the defense will start and end with them. Josh Farmer mentioned the screen pass, a lot of rotations up front. And I think because Kyrus Tonga, who's not guaranteed a roster spot, is still their third defensive tackle, Farms, Aiton, a lot of these guys could make a push, and you're still going in week 3 being like, who the hell 62 and 68 or 98 there in the middle? Linebackers, Tavai's injury, Dents, which is still kind of a deep position, I think, at off-ball linebacker for them. Robert Spillane is calling the signals. You'd expect that from the middle linebacker. You signed from upwards of $35, $37 million, whatever it was. Tavai, though, can flex onto the edge, and that caught my attention, and they haven't let him do it a ton because you have traditional edges there, K'Lavon Chaisson, Harold Landry. Nothing really to report on Harold Landry either. Keon White, obviously, all these different players. But when you look at off-ball, too, Monty Rice, who we said got a pass breakup, as we just do the deepest freaking cuts on this roster, played 3 seasons in Tennessee under Mike Vrabel. That's not nothing, and had a good practice. Defensive backs. No Carlton Davis. Let Alex Austin and Miles Battle get more run opposite Christian Gonzalez. I think they, for now, are far and ahead of the Isaiah Boldens of the world. And whether or not that means they both make the roster, I don't know. No Marcus Jones, as I mentioned. Marcus Dial got a lot of run at nickelback. Super athlete, but basically only played special teams last year. The safeties, Duggar's not in team drills, still coming back from the high ankle. But Jabril Peppers, man, is ready to hit some people and would have absolutely smoked Travion Henderson on a short 6-yard completion over the middle. One of those whoo-hoo that you hear from defenders as they sprint by the guy they otherwise would have absolutely obliterated. So he fits this defense, I think, more than he's giving credit for. Craig Woodson would have dropped Maye on a sack. He also patrolled the deep middle, which, if you read Mike Reese's Sunday notes, as everybody should, nicknamed the Eraser because he just erased, apparently, a Cal, and you could see this on the tape, any deep throws or discourage quarterbacks from making those, and the trust that they have in him to play split safety, post safety, off the slot a little bit is evident, and I think speaks to what you were talking about with Chism earlier from something you heard. Rookies that can pick up the playbook, they're gonna play. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that I would point to that safety group a little bit for like guys just keep standing out. Jalen Hawkins had the pass breakup this week. There was a play last week. It was a deep ball, I think, to Javon Baker that Del Pettis just like covered it perfectly as a safety. And like coaches on the sideline were like shouting it up for Del Pettis for covering it so well. So like those are two guys who have stood out in the last 2 weeks. As you mentioned, Josh Minkins had an interception. So he's another guy who's showing positive strides so far, but like it's a really tough group to make your roster cuts because like you would assume Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, Marcus Epps, Brendan Schooler are all like locks or close to being locks.
Do you think Epps is a lock?
I mean, I don't know. Like I guess like
you do. You just said it, but I
didn't say lock. I said like close to being locks. I mean, he's probably making the roster. Like I don't know. Like
I'll find his contract, but keep going on him because we haven't.
I think he's got like $1 million guaranteed or 500,000. So it's like he could be cut, but like you don't necessarily want to cut a guy with guaranteed money. Then like Craig Woodson looks like he's making the roster so far. So that's 5 right there. And then you're throwing in Hawkins, who was re-signed, Del Pettis, who had a strong rookie season. I guess Marte Mapu, if you're including him in the linebackers, then he doesn't need to be included. But like Josh Minkins, who had a good play, is like 8th on the depth chart right now. So it's not necessarily like the strongest group, but it does go very deep into players who can actually contribute in the NFL. And it's going to be really curious to see how that entire group shakes out. Like who winds up even being the starters. If Craig Woodson keeps playing this well, and if he can erase the middle of the defense, then like maybe you feel more comfortable with him as a free safety over a guy like Duggar or Jabril Peppers. So just another position that seems like it's still being sorted out a little bit. And I can't see them keeping 7 guys, but currently there are like 7 guys who are worthy of roster spots on this team.
Do you think that puts heat on Duggar and or Peppers?
I think it could. Like, I don't think that they necessarily want to cut or trade those guys, but last year they felt like they could survive at safety with 2 guys who were traditional strong safeties by having one of them play free safety. And like, it went pretty well in 2023. Then Peppers had the off-field issues. Kyle Duggar got injured, and the safety group was not necessarily the biggest strength last season. I think that Brian Belichick did all he could with that group, and guys like Del Pettis, Jalen Hawkins probably played over their heads at that position. But yeah, I mean, like if Vrabel and if Terrell Williams and if the Patriots defensive coaching staff doesn't feel comfortable using either Kyle Duggar or Jabril Peppers as a free safety, then you're talking about one of those guys being that third rotational safety, box safety, hybrid linebacker, whatever it is. And you're paying a lot of money for a guy who's not necessarily a 100% of snaps a game type of guy.
It's a really interesting group. And it's funny that as much as we're turning the page, the Patriots are turning the page, you're on your second head coach since Bill Belichick left. The Patriots defense is still trying to build the entire damn plane out of safeties. And good. Yeah. Like I am more doubtful about Epps' long-term viability, but if he does stick on the roster, and again, he's someone who's traditionally been a box safety and had some a good year in Vegas, I think, after he got traded from Philadelphia, but then that does put pressure on Peppers and Duggar, who make a lot more money, and there are some complications if you were to trade them, as there were rumors last year, and obviously it didn't happen, and the Patriots are in a much different situation than they are now. But there are no sacred cows here with Vrabel. Like that's just what it is. There are no Belichick darlings as Marte Mapu was. And you root for a guy who I should have had in my notes, and another guy, I'm glad you're here and bring this up, is now a linebacker. Like that seems to be settled. He's running with the linebackers.
Right.
This is the system that relies more on speed at the second level. and is not going to just drop down safeties to make that happen. They're going to run with guys, as they did in Tennessee sometimes, who are 220 pounds.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many of them here in New England. But Marte Mapu at least has a home, and we'll see how long.
Yeah, I mean, Epps could be cut, but like if they cut him, they're eating $500,000, which is not.
But they have
nothing. But they have the space. But like, you don't want to, as an organization, you don't want to just give a guy $500,000 to be cut. So that's not like a guarantee to make the roster. But you don't want to have too many of those guys where you're like, oh, okay, here's $500,000, now you're cut. You know.
I agree. I just think there's part of that money is baked into the negotiation. Like if I'm going to lure you here, I'm going to sign you here. Okay, make it worth my while, even if things go south. And when you get to cut down day, teams expect, okay, a couple of these guys that we just had to bring to the table, we now have to send away with more money than we'd like to because we got them here in the first place, but we got to look at them. And that was the cost of doing business. Like
you know what?
You don't want to do a ton of dead money, but I think there are a couple of guys you always know you're going to cut with around that amount if your roster is good enough.
I'll also eat my words right now because Jalen Hawkins actually has more guaranteed money than Marcus Epps. So there we go. I mean, like you win this one. I guess based on contract alone, Jalen Hawkins would be more guaranteed a roster spot than Marcus Epps, and that's actually pretty interesting that they did give Hawkins that much. So yeah,
and they like him. I mean, he's a useful player. I mean, both of them are, but the familiarity with Hawkins, and I think also is. Best I could tell, a good locker room guy last year.
Good leader, for sure.
Yeah, for everything that's hitting the fan, and just the fan never stopped, and neither did the it. He hung in there and played decent football. Okay, what quickly of the coaches' comments, revelations? Zach Kerr had no update. This is their interim DC while Terrell Williams is still away. Right. I said this last night, but my suspicion is Terrell Williams will be back sometime during training camp, provided, of course, everything gets better with his health as he continues to be with the team via Zoom, but he should be in person, I expect, sometime this summer. Though Zach Kerr said officially he didn't have a timetable.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is interesting that they've chosen Zach Kerr to be kind of their defensive play caller while Terrell Williams is out. I thought it was even interesting that they gave him a podium on Monday. Usually, I think under Bill Belichick, like if he didn't have the actual physical title as defensive coordinator, he'd just be there with the assistants. But I thought it was smart because a lot of people would have been asking questions of Zach Kerr. Nothing super specific was standing out. I think Thomas Brown, like this is very minor, but Thomas Brown went kind of deep into like, it's hard to find a fullback these days. And that's why you're always like, bringing in a third string linebacker or an undersized defensive tackle to be your fullback on the roster. Like Brock Lampy's trying to do it right now. They've got Jack Westover and Jaheim Bell, like these guys taking reps at fullback, but like, just because guys are lining up at fullback right now doesn't necessarily mean that they can actually play it and do it in the NFL, and they want to see it once the pads come on in those positions. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier, like offensive coaches feel like they've got a real say in this offense, which I think is a good move by Josh McDaniels to give them that say, because like overall, I would also say that just from talking to the assistants today, we know it, but like, just from talking to them, these guys are so much more experienced than the coaching staff last year. Like last year, you're talking to a bunch of guys who are in their first year as a position coach, had only been assistants before, whatever it is. Like this year, you've got Todd Downing, who's been an offensive coordinator. You've got Doug Marrone, who's been a head coach. You've got Thomas Brown, who's been an interim head coach. Like Ashton Grant is the guy who's like actually ascended up to quarterback coach after being assistant quarterbacks coach. But he also has a ton of confidence. Is obviously a really smart guy. And like, I just fully trust this coaching staff, especially on offense, to handle their business and know what they're doing a lot more than last year's.
So the resume, because that's all we have to go off from right now. Again, this is the schedule in front of me. This is what I'm doing with the schedule in front of me. Is the best coaching staff they've had since 2018, in my estimation. Yep. And that's experience, that's winning. And that was Josh McDaniels, obviously the offensive coordinator. Brian Flores was your defensive play caller. Bunch of assistants from Josh Boyer at corners. Brendan Daly was still here, and he's since gone on to coach defensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs and won a bunch more Super Bowls. Josh Boyer was a DC for the Dolphins under Flores. Like, bunch of smart guys who have their own original thoughts. It's been a long, long time. Since my first year in the beat, they had as good of a coaching staff. And it's not just how they treat the media or what they say, or, oh, no, it's there in the media. Look at the resumes. Judge for yourself. So I think that is plenty evident as they move forward. Okay, last thing.
Is it fair to say, and not to get this off the rails again, but do you think it's fair to say that there's more confidence in the offensive staff than the defensive staff this season? It helps to have Mike Vrabel as a defensive-minded head coach, but Terrell Williams is a guy who's never been a defensive coordinator. He's a
Yes.
defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Justin Hamilton has never been a cornerbacks coach, and he's a cornerbacks coach. Clint McMillan has never been a defensive line coach. He's a defensive, like it's a lot of guys, even Zach Kerr, like guys who have ascended into these roles rather than on offense. They've kind of like fallen back down into these roles. Like it's a lot more experience on offense than there is on defense. Like I think it's a good sign that all of these defensive coaches have progressed to the point where they've earned these positional coaching roles, but they haven't necessarily proven that they can do it in the NFL yet.
Yeah, like Clint McMillan was an assistant defensive line coach.
Exactly.
When you say, just to clarify for the folks who don't know, it's not like they pulled him out of,
no,
I don't know, the Ross Douglas,
right,
Vinny Terry tree, and with like go coach offenses and lifeline defense.
Justin Hamilton was an assistant defensive backs coach. Right. Now he's a safeties coach. So
no,
these are guys who
totally
were assistants and now have ascended up into the main positional coaching role.
And when they were assembled, the conversations we were having about the offensive staff was not, can Thomas Brown coach tight ends? Can Josh McDaniels run it off? Can Doug Marrone coach offensive line? It was kind of like, I don't want to say drama, but like, how are the pieces going to fit together? Individually, they're fine. And I think that's fair of any new staff. But when you have as strong and effective, I believe, as a leader as Mike Vrabel and McDaniels now, who is from a leverage standpoint in his own room because he has nowhere else to go. And he's been surrounded by assistants that he didn't really choose. He has to listen. They have to collaborate. There's incentive to work together. So those concerns that we even had about the offensive staff, which unquestionably, it's just a fact, is more experienced and has accomplished more. The stuff that we're concerned about is probably going to go by the wayside eventually. And even if there are disagreements everywhere, which isn't to say this is going to go great. I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm just saying, yes, the offensive staff is better than the defensive staff. But overall, top to bottom, it's the deepest they've had in years. And I think will be a big reason why they surprised at whatever level so far. All right. The last thing I wanted to do was something I'm going to spring on you here. The MYOP and the DIOP. I want your most interesting offensive player of OTAs in the 3 practices that we got, and your most interesting, the mid. So, most interesting defensive player that you have.
Most interesting offensive player and most interesting.
The MYOP and the mid P. Yes.
Okay.
I'm learning the acronyms actively right now.
The acronyms are terrible. Yeah. I mean, I guess I would go Chism for most interesting offensive player, just because I don't think there's another like standout guy where like Lan Larison was doing a lot early on in minicamp or in OTAs, but then like once Ramondre Stevenson came back, it seemed like Lan Larison's role really decreased a bit. So I think it would have to go with Chism on offense. And you know what? I'll go with Joshua Farmer on defense because now 2 weeks in a row, he's batted passes at the line of scrimmage. He's making plays out there. Like, there's not a lot of opportunities for defensive linemen to make plays during unpadded practices. And Joshua Farmer is doing enough to make you like notice him and highlight him. So I'll go with 2 rookies and I'll say those guys. I'm sure there's a lot of other options on defense. But yeah, I'll go with Chism and Farmer.
Cool. You've seen one more practice than I have, so I take your opinions more seriously than mine. I'm going to throw Craig Woodson in there. That's and this is a player that I think, this profile of player who gets a lot of praise for being very smart. And again, this is not things that you can't see on tape. It's there. But a 4th round pick that, if we're all being honest and just turn back the clock over a month ago, we're like, huh? Right. Really? Is this what you want to do? I can start to see it now a little bit more. And so the possibility is there for him, given his versatility and where he can move about, and the trust they've clearly at least shown early in him has me interested. Chism, I think, by default has to be the answer here. Certainly none of the tight ends. Trayvon Henderson can make a pick, but we were already pretty intrigued by him as it is. The offensive line is what it is. And again, that's another position, padded practice. There's only so much you can show. We're always paying attention to the quarterbacks. And then you're really left with the receivers. And among those receivers, it's the little kid out of Eastern Washington. Little kid, he's 5'11", who's bringing his lunch pail, is playing with plenty of grit and giving it all he's got out of Eastern Washington. So, yeah, congrats.
Shocked you didn't shout out your guy Miles Battle as the most interesting defensive player.
I feel like we've lost so many people on this podcast for like 10 seconds being like, who the hell is Isaiah Eiten? So there are only so many deep cuts that people can take. Though the Miles battle has me intrigued. I'm going to wait. I'm holding on to him for training camp. Always have a
Converted
couple
wide
of guys.
receiver in college. Taking the Richard Sherman approach.
Look, you love the corners with ball skills because even if they get beat, the next rep, they have a better chance of getting a pick than the next guy who has no ball skills.
Tall and fast.
Yep. Yeah, and he's getting a lot of run next to Alex Austin. So he's the runner-up for the mid-P. All right, the first ever MyOp mid-P awards, which I'm going to stop saying because everyone hates it on the Pats Interference podcast. Anything else that we missed or you want to drop before we go?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty well.
Okay. One thing I will add, because we have very little time left, and I know folks have heard this a lot from me here and certainly on Patch Chats, that this is the last chance, last 36 hours to donate to Doug's campaign, Team Princess Hallie Forever. And because you've heard me say this time and again, I'm just going to put it this way. Take a minute today. If you got this far in the podcast, you listened to an hour and 15 and a half minutes of football and Cardi B and fake awards that no one's going to remember. You can take another minute to email me or look at Doug's Twitter or look at my Twitter or Google Doug Kide LLS and donate money to help families battling blood cancer.
Definitely.
There are 36 hours left. This would mean the world to me, more importantly, much more importantly, to Doug, his wife Jen, and daughter Olivia, and Hallie's honor. They have raised an incredible amount of money. We are celebrating Thursday in LLS's annual gala for the Visionaries of the Year program. You're still listening right now. You have the time. Any amount counts. This goes to families fighting, sometimes children fighting for their lives. The best place you can do and the best thing you can do today is to go to that website and donate. Please do so. The link is also in the description of this podcast. And I just really appreciate everyone who's done so already, because when I say it means the world, there's not much more since I joined the team and you were kind enough to invite me that's given me more gratification than seeing the kindness and generosity of strangers to, again, what is among the best causes possible out there.
Definitely. Yeah, we've got an amazing amount of donations so far. And yeah, either click on the link in the podcast description, go to Andrew's Twitter, princesshallyforever.com is another way you can donate. So yeah, our goal is to make sure that other families don't go through what we had to go through with Hallie, and that we can eventually find a cure for these blood cancers, get new treatments, get new trials. And yeah, that's our goal. We want more research for leukemia, for lymphoma, for blood cancers, and hopefully with the amount of money that we've raised, we can help make an impact. And any donation helps it all, whether it's $5, $10, $100, $1,000. Everything matters. Everything counts. Everything brightens our day by getting that email in our inbox that says that somebody donated.
Well, I just got an email that popped up here on my phone. It says the mattress movers are going to be here in 2 minutes. So if that is not
there, we go.
Timing, we don't have to ask them about Cardi B or the Patriots OTAs. Doug, thank you as always. It's a treat and a treasure and a pleasure to work with you generally, but especially in these podcasts. And so everyone listen to Patch Chat, read us the Boston Herald. We will have start to finish coverage of Patriots minicamp next week. I will have a mailbag episode later this week, so start to think of your questions. Again, please donate to Doug's campaign, and I'll see you soon. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.